For 17 years, we have had a couple of speakers on Yom Kippur talk about how and why they chose to join the Jewish people. Many people have told me how inspiring these speeches are. This year we had an entire extended family of 11 people convert to Judaism. This family has been attending our chapel services every week for over a year. They're delighted to celebrate the holidays and Shabbat here at Beth Yeshurun. This past year, they built a beautiful sukkah, following instructions they found on the internet for how to construct a kosher one. And they also sent me pictures of their sukkah, as well as their Passover Seder, which was also beautifully decorated. We have had more than 24 other adults convert to Judaism. Some of them converted with their children as well. I wish I could have all of them speak about their spiritual journeys, but then it would be time to blow the shofar and break the fast. I'm often asked why so many people are choosing Judaism. Well, for some people, they first learned about it from a friend or a business associate. Some are dating a Jewish person. Some had a Jewish father, and religion was not a big part of their childhood. Some just could not understand the religion they were raised in and went on a spiritual journey to find something more fulfilling. And they found it in Judaism. Whatever path the students take, they all express a genuine excitement about our faith, our history, our culture, and our community. Today we're going to hear from two very, very special individuals who have chosen to follow the Jewish way of life and become part of our community. By coincidence, they are both from Minnesota. Our first speaker is Kirsi Kuutti. Kirsi has been coming very regularly to the Museum Minyan on Saturday mornings. She works at the Johnson Space Center for NASA as the flight controller in mission control for the International Space Station. Our second speaker is Blair Benham-Pyle, and she's been coming very regularly to our sanctuary service over this past year. She's an assistant professor in stem cell and regenerative biology at Baylor College of Medicine. So please join me now in welcoming first Kirsi and then Blair to our community here at Beth Yeshurun.
All right, I won't be talking about space today though, guys. When people who are born Jewish hear my concise thesis of why I wanted to become Jewish, they generally respond in one of two ways. It is, or fun. But that's how I sum up being Jewish in two words. It's fun. Of course, that does not sufficiently communicate my understanding of responsibility, history, and duty that comes with being Jewish. It's fun is an especially weak argument 18 hours into our fast. For me, it's fun summarizes my experience in the Jewish community and is an accurate characterization of my motivation to convert for myself and without feeling of any external obligation. Studying Tanakh, building community, going to services, learning Hebrew, debating peers, and strengthening a connection with God is fun. I was raised in northern Minnesota, so imagine Lake Wobegon, amongst pine trees, fishing boats, and plenty of snow. I was raised with strong Scandinavian ties and a Lutheran tradition. I was a dedicated pupil at church, if I do say so myself. Volunteering at events, writing analyses of sermons, participating on the church board as a youth rep, and singing in the worship choir. My confirmation thesis was on the creation story or stories described in Genesis and how they are scientifically plausible without literal interpretation of the text. Come late high school and through college, I was done with my relationship with God. I was stumped by inconsistencies and fed up with the human aspects that make being a part of a religious collective challenging. So for the past 10 years of my life, I considered myself as having no religious affiliation. So what changed? In 2018, I started dating a nice Jewish young man, Desmond, and we got engaged in December. Yeah, thanks. Desmond invited me to learn about his identity and participate in the holidays and events. The following years included a collection of Jewish experiences, asking Desmond about what was read that Shabbat, intentionally avoiding work on Saturdays, and reading Torah each week with Desmond for a cycle. I didn't assume explicit ownership and identity of exploring Judaism until going on an art retreat 2 years ago. I found art to be the most resonating way to interact with Judaism. Absorbing and creating art has been a part of my entire life. I explored Judaism through art by visiting Jewish quarters in Spain, painting an art show submission with Hebrew motifs, and exploring Salvador Dali's crypt. The top of the Dali abode in Figures, that's a small town in Spain, features watercolor works for Israel's 20th anniversary, one print of which is framed in Stein Hall. That print, Aliyah Plate 1, was a welcoming sight when I started taking Rabbi Morgan and Cantor Dorf's classes. Last year, I attended Rabbi Morgan's Invitation to Judaism and Cantor Dorf's introductory Hebrew classes. I attended with the intent to learn more about Judaism, but I didn't know if I wanted to convert. We were advised to keep a journal through the class with notes and thoughts of our experiences. I'm holding up my journal. It has a cat with flowers on it. Within my first class journal entry, I wrote, "I don't know if I want to convert, nor do I know when or if I want to or not. I would surprise myself if I knew before the end of this class." Yom Kippur falls only about a week or two after the start of Invitation to Judaism class. So kudos to the students who are here today. Last year, I joined the Museum Minyan for services. I had gone to a more typical Shabbat service 2 weeks before, but now we had a book with a different cover, different tunes, and different prayers. I did my best to follow the English translations and focus on the footnotes about the prayer's origins. Deep into the service, the Minyan took a moment to read a psalm aloud in English. I was transported back to my grandma's house, her bedroom with the door cracked open, the smell of emeralds perfume, the ruffle of a dark floral dust runner, and a page marked with a pink tissue, because it's daintier when it's pink. Psalm 23, David's prayer starts, "Adonai is my shepherd, I shall not want." My grandma also found meaning in this, even enough to recite it frequently and mark it. Amongst the Minyan, in relief, in fear, in awe, I wondered, how did this prayer find me? Over the past year, my exploration of Judaism transformed into a need for it. This year, I have established a cohort of young adult peers, found my home in Museum Minyan, participated in the ongoing challenge to read all 929 chapters of Tanakh, learned how to rap tefillin at Worldwide Rap, and hosted several Shabbat dinners with friends. This May, I made my conversion official with a testimony to the Beit Din and submersion at the UOS mikvah. I was so grateful to share my special day with other Museum Minyoners, Invitation class alumni Natasha, my fiance, and my sister. I'm also so thrilled that Blair, a fellow Minnesotan, has shared her conversion day with me, truly making us Minnesota twins. Although I meandered during my 5-year exploration into Judaism, it was fun, and I'm determined to continue having fun.
Good afternoon. When Rabbi Morgan asked me to speak to you this afternoon, I thought for a long time about what aspect of my path to Judaism might be the most interesting. Like many people who choose Judaism, my path was accelerated by falling in love with a Jewish man, my husband Bobby. But I thought it might be interesting for you to hear why it was so easy for me to say yes when Bobby asked me if I had ever thought about joining the Jewish people. You see, I think I was moving towards Judaism for years before I ever met Bobby. And this year, when I stepped into the mikveh, right after Kirsi, I finally got to recognize who I've always been. I grew up in an agnostic home. My father was a psychiatrist, my mother a PhD chemist, and they never talked about belief in God. However, embedded in our family values was a strong sense of integrity, personal accountability, and social responsibility. We kept our promises, we built trust among ourselves and our community, and we spoke up for right and wrong. At the time, my parents explained our family values in the language of the golden rule. How would you feel if another person treated you poorly? Would you be inclined to trust them, care for them, seek their counsel, or seek revenge? When you treat others poorly, you not only bring negativity into the world, but you give others permission to do the same to you. These conversations convinced me that acting with compassion and justice towards others simply made sense. How could you build a better world through collective action without it? My first memories of religious practice were when my paternal grandmother moved in with us when I was 5 years old. She attended a nearby Christian church every Sunday, and I went with her once. They had cookies. I liked that. I think it was around that time that I asked my parents about religion. To my surprise, they told me that my grandparents had encouraged them to baptize me, but they hadn't felt comfortable making that decision for me. They told me that since neither one of them felt connected to a religious practice, they thought I should feel free to choose a practice as an adult, free from their influence. I took their invitation to explore religion seriously. During high school, I took classes on world religion and constitutional law. I became fascinated by the origins of ethics and morality and the intersection of human government and world religions. When I went to college, I devoted my professional studies to science, but I continued to dedicate every credit that I could to philosophy and the foundation of morality. While scientific exploration became my professional passion, ethics and policy became a personal one. I never consciously associated these studies with a search for religious practice, but I think I was searching for something. I think I was circling around a fundamental question. Where does our sense of right and wrong come from? Can we find a universal right and wrong that we can all agree on? Throughout my life, I was exposed to the Jewish people and their community again and again. I celebrated friends' bar and bat mitzvahs and the Jewish wedding of my second grade teacher. In college, my friends hosted seders or were members of Megevet, Yale's Jewish a cappella group. I enjoyed the Jewish community. I enjoyed their focus on family, self-improvement, and justice. I found their practices, so often centered around a kitchen table with family and friends, beautiful. And as a cheap college student, I appreciated a free Kiddush lunch, complete with tuna and challah. But most importantly, when I was among the Jewish people, I felt a true desire to improve the world without judgment or a search for power, only social justice. It was then that I finally admitted to myself that if I were to choose a religion, it would probably be Judaism. When I matched with my now husband, Bobby, on a dating app in April of 2021, we spent hours texting before we ever agreed to go on our first date. Bobby likes to say that if there are topics too sensitive for a first date, you should cover them beforehand, including politics and religion. I forgot the context, but in response to one of my texts, Bobby replied, "So, you grew up without religion?" I said the ever-growing response of young Americans, "Yes, but I consider myself spiritual, not religious." Then I messaged him, "What about you?" He responded, "I'm Jewish." He couldn't see my face through the app, but I smiled. In so many ways, choosing Judaism has felt like an easy transition for me. My core personal values include personal responsibility, integrity, and self-improvement. I enjoy meditation and self-reflection, including intentional rest from my professional work. As I've learned more and more about Jewish values and beliefs, it's been easy to see my own values reflected in the practices of the Jewish people. But there was one moment on my journey in Rabbi Morgan's class where I feel everything just clicked into place. Rabbi Morgan was explaining modern Jewish conceptions of God, and he spoke of a force outside of space and time, a force for good in the world. It was a big moment for me. You see, I've always felt that there are inherent good forces in the world. I've observed them and learned of them throughout our history. People strive for more just and inclusive societies. We build community centers, schools, museums, and places for reflection and healing. We create beautiful things. Based on these observations, I remain an optimist. Despite a warming planet, gun violence, persecution, and injustice, I remain hopeful for our future. I have faith that we can build a better universe for future generations because we've done it before. I believe there's a force for good in the universe that pushes us towards connection, beauty, and joy, and we are capable of great things when we tap into it. It wasn't until that moment in class that I realized my own beliefs could be found amongst the many Jewish interpretations and descriptions of God. My stubborn optimism is my version of faith. And I have found a people, a faith, and a community whose stubborn optimism has sustained them from generation to generation, despite all obstacles. A community to share my studies, an exploration of morality and purpose, a community to rest with on Shabbat, to celebrate and mourn with during life's many stages. All of this is why, when I finally stepped into the mikveh a few days before meeting Bobby under the huppah, I had no hesitation, no doubts, no reservations. I was simply becoming more genuinely myself. And that is why, when all the papers had been signed, Rabbi Fort said to me, "Welcome home."
Well, so Blair and Kirsi, you make me want to become a rabbi. Over the years, I've been honored and delighted to officiate at the conversion of hundreds of Jews by choice. A large number of them have joined our congregation and have become active participants at our Shabbat services, in adult education, at holiday events, and other activities. They're raising their children to be Jewish in our religious schools and day schools, and we're very blessed to have their energy and enthusiasm. If you know someone who is thinking about becoming Jewish, please feel free to have them call me. Each year we have about 25 students in the class. This year we're starting with about 35. I hope that by listening to Kirsty and Blair today, you can see why I found this to be such a rewarding part of my responsibilities here at Beth Yeshurun. And I hope you will all continue to welcome into our community these wonderful people who are committed to our way of life and our faith and are committed to our community, and we should be committed to them as well. Gemar Chatima Tova.